Alex Steves just finished up his second year with the Toronto Marlies while also playing some games at the NHL level. But next year, he wants to go all in with the Toronto Maple Leafs. He joins me in the first episode of the interview. If you do enjoy it, make sure to leave a like. If you really enjoy it, subscribe, and let's get to the interview featuring Alex Steves. Welcome to the first episode of the interview. Today we have a very special guest, a Toronto Marlie in the Toronto Maple Leafs organization. It is Alex Steves. Welcome to the show. Welcome to the inaugural episode. If there is going to be more episodes, how's the summer going?
It's going well, man. Good to kind of see you, talk to you again. I think season ended about a month ago, so took some time off. Had some things I had to take care of, like get my wisdom teeth out. I lost all my wisdom, and other than that, I just kind of went home for a little bit in Minnesota, golfed, played some pickleball with my family and friends, visited my girlfriend a little bit in Ohio, and other than that, I'm kind of just starting up my training again, so it's been pretty good so far.
So what's the training like? I know, like, for I guess a lot of hockey players, like, you wake up early and you train and you get it done, and then you have the rest of the day. Is that sort of how it is for you, or how does it work?
Yeah, I've definitely seen people do it many ways. Personally, I am definitely of the mindset and lifestyle that I'd like to get it done early in the morning. That way, you kind of preserve the rest of your day, especially if the weather's good, to kind of be outside and hang with friends and stuff. So definitely a good little groove for me, especially when I'm home in the summer in Minnesota, is, if I'm skating or working out that day or both, try to have it done by noon to 1. And then, I've got the rest of the day to golf or swim or do whatever. So I definitely like to bang it out, be productive in the mornings.
I do want to go back. I guess I don't know how long it's been, a month or two since the season ended for you. You guys lost in the third round of the playoffs. You played Utica in the second round. You looked really good. It seemed like, after a rough, I guess, patch at the end of the season, it looked like the team found its way back to how you guys were. And then you went out in the third round. What do you think happened there? Like, what do you think went wrong? I guess as you have like a month or whatever it's been to really sit and think about it.
Yeah, I would definitely say that the Rochester series didn't go according to plan or how we would have hoped. I think there's various things that go into it. This was my first like playoff series experience since I played in the USHL, so it's a little different in college. So kind of getting back into that groove and mindset. I was quickly reminded and enjoyed the emotional ups and downs of a series. It's hockey's crazy, and it's not just hockey, but like these 5-7 game series, like you can pretty quickly go from feeling like the world is an oyster if you're up in a series, to then very quickly you lose a game or two in a row, and then your backs are against the wall. So I think with our group in that Rochester series, number one thing that I look at is I want to say we gave up like 19 goals against in 3 games. That's pretty unacceptable. If you're trying to win, we would have to be scoring at quite a clip to win any of those games. So that number one was a struggle. I think they definitely got the best of us on their power play. Our PK certainly wasn't up to the standard that we held it to and felt like we had gotten it to. Throughout the course of the year, we grew a lot as a PK unit throughout the year. And then I think that series, at the end of the day, they outplayed us on the power play. I would say that our power play outplayed their PK, so there's a little give and take there. But at the same time, just wasn't good enough. And they have a really good power play over there, so that's part of the deal. Sometimes if there's going to be plays through a series where you just got to tip your cap, but I think ultimately for that series to go differently, we would have had to shore up ourselves defensively, 5-on-5, and particularly on the PK. Other than that, thinking back through the games, I'm not someone who totally likes to talk about officiating a lot. But again, it was another experience. And, listening to some of these NHL coaches, even like I think I read something John Cooper said where, you look back at all these pivotal moments in a series, and when you win, you can point to those moments where all the bounces went your way and the calls went your way. Nobody expects the refs to be perfect. And I would say that whether it's the refs or just how it went, in particular, game 2, I remember there was an instance or two where I thought that game was kind of not dictated by a couple calls that were made against us, but like we kind of went off the rails a little bit. I remember, our team being pretty upset, our coaching staff being pretty upset, but that's no excuse. I mean, I don't think we lost that series by any means because of officiating. I think Rochester outplayed us. So those are kind of the things that I remember. But, we played hard, and looking back, I feel like in every single game we had a chance to win and we were in the game. And then all of a sudden, whether it be getting exposed on the penalty kill or getting distracted by the refs, which whether that was right or wrong, hard to say. I just think at the end of the day, it didn't go our way. And it's unfortunate. You learn from it. I think everyone in that locker room would hopefully learn from it moving forward, but it's hard to win. And Rochester's a really good team. They gave Hershey a pretty good series, and Hershey's one win away from, being the team standing at the end of it. So I think it was just, a series that we lost and we're outplayed.
And speaking of learning, like you kind of said it where, at one point you feel like you're on top of the world, and then, things can change so quick. To you, is that probably the biggest thing you learned playing in, I guess, your first professional playoffs? Was that, as much as it's, again, you can be very high and then it can just go so low, like just not taking things for granted and sort of taking it at a game at a time type of thing?
Yeah, I mean, I think all of the cliches apply. Personally, I felt one of the things I feel like college hockey prepared me for, and not just college hockey, but being on a team who typically was playing meaningful games at the end of the year, is, in college, it's pretty much single elimination at the end of the year with, in my case, the Big Ten tournament, and then hopefully the NCAA tournament. So like in college, you really appreciate the mindset of how every single game is important, right? Like potentially every single game, even in the regular season, with the way the pairwise rankings and everything work. Like if you drop a game to a low ranked team, that can at the end of the year be the difference between you going to the tournament and not. So in college, and maybe it's the strength of the Notre Dame program and culture and head coach that I played under, but you really appreciate the importance of every game and how quickly it can turn, and how honestly your last win doesn't really matter. So I felt like throughout the playoffs this year, even when I think our team had a lot to be happy about after that Utica series, I think we had a right to be pretty proud and confident after sweeping Utica at Utica. That's hard to do. At the same time, I think sometimes maybe after a moment like that, there's an opportunity to be like, oh, we're going to be here till late June. We're winning the Calder. blah blah blah, and there needs to be that belief, but also I think there needs to be a perspective of how important the moment is. Because if you don't get through Rochester, then you're not getting to Hershey. If you don't get through Hershey, you're not getting to Coachella. So it is a long journey, and within that long journey, there's so many steps that you need to have the mental approach, and I guess realization that it can go south pretty quick. And that's, to me, like this year kind of just reminded me about how fascinating psychology is in humans in any aspect, but especially within sports and a team sport and a series. Like it's watching and also going through yourself the emotional stuff and mindset is quite interesting.
You actually just sort of, it was a nice segue to the next question. I remember at one point talking to you. I don't remember if it was closer to the playoffs, but it was at a point where you talked a little bit about how uh, you were kind of getting. I don't know if you said you were getting frustrated or like about getting called up to the Leafs. Like there was a lot of guys who got called up before you, and you said that there were a few guys on the Marlies who really gave you a new perspective about how to really think and look at that. I guess just what was the season like for you personally, I guess, in that sort of aspect? And you talk about the psychology too, and like what did you learn about all of it and yourself?
Yeah, I mean, to quickly revisit the what I think you're alluding to is I remember, yeah, I was definitely a little frustrated at times early first half of the season, maybe anticipating a call up and not getting it. I'd say the two guys that um, that really impacted me in a positive way were Adam Gaudette and Kyle Clifford. Um, with Gods, it's a guy who pretty high profile player coming out of college, has been in the NHL for however many games. I think it's a good amount. And then on a one-way contract, taking rushes with guys like Matthews and Camp, and then all of a sudden you're in the American League and you're leading our team in goals while being on the second unit power play. And long story short, I guess lots of reasons to be grumpy and down on yourself and negative. But this guy, man, like I love Gods to death, and from him, I just learned that like he had so many reasons to be down, and he was so happy to be on the Marlies and like playing with our group every single day. And to me, that's just something that you know I I'll always remember just how he handled the situation. Um, I think I think you should never be content with your situation if you think you have more potential in you. But at the same time, the approach that he chose to use to get out of that situation, I was super, super impressed by. And then with a guy like Cliffy, obviously remarkable career. And like at the end of the year, like I saw a guy who, you know, didn't have to care as much as he did because, if you've flown so close to the sun and winning the cup and stuff, like in the American League, like, there could easily be a reason that you're like, hey, like, you know, what is this when I've done that? But this guy, like, he wanted a Calder Cup. Like, he was playing so hard. And, like, to me, similar to Gods, like, that just really rubbed off on me just because, seeing a guy who just loves hockey at the end of the day and loves winning and knows what it's like on the other side once you win. Those two guys in particular really, I think, seeing the way they conducted themselves, I'll remember that moving forward. In terms of my season, I think it was a season where I showed a lot of growth as a player. That I think stemmed from a little bit of a journey I went through in terms of kind of discovering what the ideal version of myself is going to look like in the NHL, which is where I want to be. And I believe, I'm right on the cusp, if not ready to be a full timer. So went through a journey in part with, management, coaching staff about what they think the ideal version of Alex Steves on the ice is, and then what I believe it is. And, I think I showed a lot of growth in terms of my physicality, being that type of player who, even if you're not on the score sheet, you're making an impact, finishing hits, being an abrasive player. I was really happy with the growth I showed in that role. And then also bringing that up to the NHL and my call up. I thought my call up this season compared to last season, I was much more influential on the game. I think I had two chances in the first two games where, flip a coin. One of them was off the post. The other one, goalie made an unbelievable save. Like those could have been goals, but past that, I thought I was a really physical presence. Taking away the puck, forechecking. In the New Jersey game, I was able to lay a really big hit on one of their defensemen. Stuff like that, where being realistic, I think I'm going to be a third or fourth liner with the Leafs if I can break in with them, at least early on. So how can you find ways, whether it be with limited ice time or in that role, to be someone who impacts every single game? For me, I think that's going to be through hard work, physicality, and then hopefully, in my opinion, like my kind of thesis about what the ideal version of myself is that I'm the type of player who can do all those hard things, but also elevate a line offensively. I think that's a potentially unique skill set, being able to kind of have that offensive side, but also that physical side. So that's kind of something that throughout the year I felt I was able to kind of foster and harvest a little bit more, and I'm excited to continue to grow in that moving forward.
Talking a little bit about like the jump, like how, as a hockey player, like to me, like I don't see, or I can see instances of like the jump and the differences from the NHL to the AHL, but like to a hockey player, like how big of a difference is it from the AHL to the NHL, and what are some of those changes?
Yeah, I think it's a huge jump and a small jump all at the same time. And some of it's physical and some of it's mental. Um, right off the bat, I would say the elephant in the room is that in the American League, like, 'cause in my opinion, hockey's a game of mistakes and then capitalizing on mistakes. So in the American League, if I turn the puck over, don't get me wrong, there's lots of talented players in the American League, but the odds of them capitalizing on that aren't as high as if I turn the puck over to Jack Hughes and Jack Hughes is breathing down our goalie's neck. So um, I would say the upper tier of talent in the NHL is going to make you pay and can humiliate you pretty quickly if you fall asleep or make a boneheaded play. So outside of that, it's the players are better, they're bigger, stronger, faster. But I think a lot of people would be surprised how many players in the American League you could put into an NHL roster for a game and they would look completely normal or even excel if given the opportunity. So that's for me, like my adventure that I'm kind of on is um, how can it get to the point when you're getting called up and you're ready for an opportunity and you're just playing. I listened to a Spit and Chicklets podcast with Martin St. Louis, and he said like the big moment where it changed for him is when he stopped putting the NHL on a pedestal. Found that pretty interesting because I think it's very true. Like the gap might not be as big as you think, and if you can get the mental hurdle out of the way that you should be nervous for some reason and just play, I think you might really surprise yourself. At the same time, I think the NHL deserves all of the respect, just because it's so hard to play in the NHL and get to the NHL, and it's even harder to stay in the NHL. So it's kind of that balancing act of having that respect and fighting for your life when you're up there, but at the same time, remembering that you're there for a reason and you're a damn good hockey player and you have that belief that you belong. So
Has there ever been a moment where like you've been with the Leafs and you just like you sit there and you think to yourself, or maybe it's a moment where like you think in your mind like I've achieved this, like this is what I've wanted my whole life, and you're there. Was there ever a moment like that, or is it sort of just like I don't know what the word might be, but like sort of like a deer in the headlights where you're like you're just going through the motions and you're just not you don't really have the time to think.
yeah, um, I mean, I would say that before my first NHL game, I was a little nervous, but once you get that first shift out of the way, then you're kind of just not going through the motions, but you're not thinking about it, right? Like you're just in another hockey game and you're trying to have
Mm.
impact on that game. Um, I definitely, you know, not as much in the moment because in the moment I'm just thinking about preparing myself to help the team win. But when you reflect on it, yeah, like I think it's so cool, and I'm so grateful that so many things went into me getting to this point, and just to be able to say that I've played in the NHL and played alongside some of these guys is pretty special, and I'll take that with me for the rest of my life. And if for some reason I wasn't able to play hockey tomorrow, I'd be proud of all the hard work I've done and what I was able to achieve. Because I think everyone wants to get to the top level of whatever it is they love or their work or whatever. And for me, that's hockey. So knowing what I've put into it and what, how many people have supported me, reflecting on that is a pretty gratifying feeling. At the same time, like when I dream about playing in the NHL and think about playing in the NHL, it's about like having that be my everyday life. Playing in the playoffs, lifting the Stanley Cup, stuff like that. And I'm certainly not satisfied with a couple call ups. So it's something that I'm obsessively pursuing and trying to make happen. So
So just a few more questions. Just the development, I guess. The next steps for you in development. Would you say it's just refining and keeping the style of game that you know and the Alex Steves you want to be, and just keep pushing towards that?
yeah, for sure. I mean, I think I'm of the personality where um, I have a lot of self belief and I believe I'm ready now. And sometimes that might lead me to being a little bit impatient, but in the grand scheme of things, I'm 23 years old. When I got called up to the Leafs 2 years ago, and then this year, I'm the youngest player in the locker room, right? Because I mean, this year Nick Robertson was hurt, so it's hard to remember that I'm still really young and I have a lot of development ahead of me. And it's hard to make it in as a young player. So for me, things that I'm still trying to capitalize on and improve are, my skating. I think my skating has continued to get better and better, mainly in part to my power and strength that I've been able to keep improving and leveraging off the ice. But also, I've put in a lot of work on edge work and kind of just applied skating with the development staff and coaches in Toronto. So for me, skating is a thing that I'm always going to try to keep improving because I think if I can keep improving that more and more and more, it's going to bode really well for any player, especially myself because, you know, not many people skate like McDavid and I'm not one of them. So it's, but, I want to be playing against that guy. So I think to do the things that I want to do, which are, being a physical presence, being a defensive presence, being an offensive presence, those are only going to be elevated if I improve my skating. Improving my skating isn't going to make me worse in those categories, at least in my opinion, and probably most. So I really hammer out the skating hard. It's what I'm doing right now with the staff, and then also, for me, I really want to keep improving on what I perceive to be my strengths too, which is my offensive instincts, and I think going from my rookie year to last year or to this season, like I think I got so tied up in my skating and physicality that I not necessarily fell out of touch, but I didn't give my goal scoring as much attention as I usually have. And,
Mm-hmm.
I still had 20 goals this year, including the playoffs, which I think a lot of people would be happy with. But knowing the ability I have and what I did in my rookie year, like I wasn't personally completely satisfied with that. So I think this summer I'm trying to kind of, while still hammering away my skating and that stuff, I want to reinvigorate myself and my shooting practice and puck handling and things of that nature. Because again, like I think if I can get to the point where I can play that third or fourth line role for the Leafs early on and be someone who's extremely physical and really annoying to play against, but also elevate lines offensively. I think that's a player that a lot of teams want. And I want to be a player teams want and can help them win. So that's kind of what I'm kind of focusing on for growth.
No, I didn't get to ask this throughout the season. I don't know why I never asked it, but you played with him for a season and now he's in development. Rich Clune, what's it like, being a teammate of his, and then he's still around. He was still at a lot of the practices. Just what's it like still having him around?
Yeah, that's a really good question, and it's something that I've been asked by a couple people. And also, I guess going into the season, I was curious to see how it would go working with Dickie, just because I, at least I feel like Dickie and I were pretty close, despite him being in his last year and me being in his first year. He was really, really good to me as a rookie and as a teammate and captain. And I felt our relationship grow throughout the year. So then going from that, where we're in the locker room together, we're teammates, spending every day together as teammates, to then going to him teaching me in like a more official role. Uh,
Mm.
I had some sort of expectation that maybe it would be weird, just because like number one, like I'm a pretty humorous personality. Him and I have the same sense of humor. Like if we were trying to work on something, would our humor get in the way? Stuff like that. But something that I was completely impressed by and happy with was how like Dickie and I, like outside of being on the ice, we were the same as we've always been, despite him being on the dev staff. But then once we got on the ice to work on something, that completely went away. Not in the sense that we weren't still like boys and in it together, but like there was no distraction or any like awkwardness. Like he would say something and I believe that what he was saying is right, and we would bang out some really good work in that area. So I think Dickie's a very smart person, um, especially socially smart. And for him, I think he was really good at just knowing how to manage a relationship you've had in the past, and then use that relationship to actually strengthen working together in a development setting. So it was super cool, and Dickie's a legend.
I know I have a few quick fire questions. It's just quick. Uh, and then that would be it for the interview. We only have like 8 minutes left, but it should be quicker than that.
Okay.
Typical off day for you in Toronto. What's it look like?
It's tough, like I'm a bit lonely in the city, to be honest. My girlfriend's not here. So many of my teammates are gone, but um, I guess typical off days, I'm waking up like 7:30, going to the rink, skating, working out. Probably done there around 1 to 2, depending on the day. Drive home, and then like I would say it's just a mixture of if the weather's good, walking around, maybe finding a nice spot to read a book, get some sun, heading down by the water, and then at my apartment, just continued reading, watching shows. I started Succession a couple weeks ago. I'm all in on that right now. That's pretty good. But I went to dinner with Joe Blandisi one time. Joe Wool and I had plans to go to dinner. So kind of just nothing much, honestly. Just working pretty hard in the mornings, and then the rest of the day, hopefully enjoying some good weather and tidying some stuff up around my apartment, setting up my plans for the summer, things of that nature. So today, before I got on this call here, I was packing up all my winter clothes to bring back to Minnesota at the end of the month. I'm moving out of my apartment, so.
Oh, okay, gotcha. So you won't be walking around King Street anymore.
Not well, I like the a lot, and I'd like to find my way back here in the fall, but we'll see. I'm actually going to see an apartment tomorrow, so for the coming season. But I will say, my first year I was in like the downtown core, right across from Scotiabank. This year I'm kind of King West area, and I'm much bigger fan of the King West situation that's going on here.
What about food? Like you I don't know whether or not this has been a long time thing, but you sort of like a foodie, you're a food guy.
Yeah.
For first of all, like what's your favorite cuisine, and if you had to pick a restaurant in Toronto to eat at, what would it be?
Yeah, it's tough to pick a favorite cuisine. Anyone who knows that I love food. I like eating good food. I love cooking, eating a lot of food. If you go out to dinner with me and you don't finish your meal, I'm probably gonna be the dump truck coming around to pick up the scraps. But I've gone back and forth. It's amazing. Like sometimes, if you just have really good food of any cuisine, you can convince yourself that that's your favorite cuisine. Like I'll go through phases. Sometimes I think sushi is my favorite. In general, though, I would settle on Thai food. I think Thai food is my favorite. With that being said, I would say pie is my favorite Thai food in Toronto. It's really good. Indian food I really like. I'd say puka is the best. So I bounce around, but yeah, I've got lots of restaurant recommendations, things of that nature. If anyone's ever curious, so and I'm also open to suggestions. Someone actually, Lawrence Gilman is a big foodie, and he's sent me heading towards a couple really good restaurants. So yeah, food's an important part of my life. I grew up in a family that just values good food, and both my parents are unbelievable cooks and enjoy food like me. Same with my brothers. So it's if I know I'm eating a good meal that night, I'm thinking about it all day. So.
And then the last question I got, like as someone who's not originally from Toronto, what say you is like the best part about this city?
The food. The food scene here is I mean, it's got to be one of the best in the world. It's pretty spectacular in terms of the diversity and all the different restaurants. But we'll get away from food. Outside of food, best part of Toronto. It's definitely not the traffic.
Oh no, or the transit.
Yeah, I have been a TTC guy actually, though. I've done some time on the TTC, but I'm kind of weaning off that a little bit as of lately because of some recent events. But Best part of Toronto, I would say, is just like the cleanliness of the city, and the safety of it
Mm-hmm.
outside of the TTC, maybe. Um, like, I don't know. Toronto's really the only city that feel like I've really learned like the back of my hand. Like, I feel pretty confident in this city now. But when I go to other cities, whether it be on the road or visiting, like a lot of the times I'm deterred by the garbage or the
Mm-hmm.
rodents, things of that nature. Like, I've been here for 2 years now and I haven't seen one mouse or rat, which
No?
I don't know if they're here. And I just like feel like I've had opportunities to see them because I've been around and I haven't seen them. So for me, that's pretty cool. There's obviously a small amount of garbage and things of that nature, but I'm constantly happy with the overall cleanliness of the city, as well as the fact that as long as you don't go looking for trouble, I typically feel like I'm pretty safe. So I think those are things that people should be grateful for and not take for granted, because I think it could be worse.
That is true. Well, again, I said this prior to the interview. I appreciate you taking the time. Uh, have a great summer. Uh, and I should see you back at the rink in the fall. It'll be nice to be back. It feels like it's already been so long. I don't know. I don't know why it's felt like that. But then right when you're back in the season, it's like, where did summer go? So
Summer flies by. It
it
goes.
does.
Um, but yeah, I mean, what today's the first day of summer technically, so
Exactly.
started. But um, yeah, no, I appreciate you having me on. Happy that I could be a part of the pilot episode of
No worries.
hopefully what is the start of something good for you. So yeah, happy to help.
All right. Well, I appreciate it again and have a good summer.
You too, man.
Take care.